Welcome to the Art of Caregiving Summit. I'm Mark Middleton from Growing Boulder, and coming up, you will hear from some of the nation's top caregiving thought leaders, including Amy O'Rourke, Teepa Snow, Molly Middleton-Meyer, and GrandPad CEO Scott Lean. We're also going to share some inspiring examples of older adults who, despite their many limitations, continue to lean into life with the help of their caregivers, and they're able to continue to live with passion and joy. Their example is helping expand the boundaries of possibility for all of us as we age, and also raising some thought-provoking questions that have the potential to transform the art of caregiving. And joining me in the studio today is my friend and colleague, Amy O'Rourke. Amy is a dedicated care manager with a passion for helping people and their loved ones find peace and joy as they age. And that, in a nutshell, is really what this summit is all about. Amy is a licensed nursing home administrator and a certified care manager with 40 years experience helping families and individuals navigate the care journey. And Amy, that journey is different and difficult for everybody, isn't it?
It is, and how I like to frame it is you prepare to be a parent, you prepare to be married, and the preparation is the same when you're caring for an older relative. It's the same kind of thought process, and it is unique, just as every marriage is unique. Every grandparent experience is unique. This is a unique experience to you, and preparing for it makes it a really meaningful experience.
So the preparation process is similar, but so few of us do it. I mean, how long do we get ready to get married? But none of us pay enough attention to getting ready for the caregiving journey, do we?
No, I think that's right. I think if more preparation is done, more knowledge is put out there, and people are prepared for it, it becomes a good experience for them, and not like flying in with your deer in a headlight or hitting a freight train hitting a wall. You're ready for it.
And we're going to try to help all of you get ready. And I got to tell you, folks, Amy has written what I consider to be the gold standard in helpful, readable, impactful books on caregiving. It's called The Fragile Years, Proven Strategies for the Care of Aging Loved Ones, and we will focus in on the fragile years in just a few moments. And Amy, the caregiving journey, frustrating at best, devastating at worst to our health, our finances, our relationships, but you know, because you've seen it every day, it really can be one of life's greatest blessings.
I've seen it with a lot of people that I've worked with, but I most identify with the experience with my father. And once I realized that all I needed to do was be there, listen, observe, my memories are so intact of the time that I spent with him in so many areas: the grocery store, the hills of Michigan, on a farm, sitting in my living room making eggs for him. They're all in me, so solid and so beautiful, and it helps me then know when I look around, where else can I bring that joy and satisfaction to others?
You know, one of the things I learned from you, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit more, is the fact that you have said caregiving is going to be messy. And I know it was with you and your father for a while, and you just have to let go and figure out a way to enjoy the ride.
That's right, that's right. The memory that comes back to me is learning how to go to the grocery store with him. So he couldn't walk very well. I'd get him in the electric motorized wheelchair, and I learned to let go and let him wander through the grocery store, knowing that he had a memory impairment, but he still liked to navigate the grocery store. He still liked to talk to the guy at the fish section and the deli person. So I learned through every time I went to the grocery store with him how letting go helped him find his own way, even with his limitations.
Hard for you to do, but you figured out how to do it. You know, this is why Amy and I like to work together, because we both want to close the gap between what is and what might be. We want to see a higher standard of care that's more aligned with possibility, because ultimately, for me at least, it's really not about being alive, it's about feeling alive. Caregiving is one of the most important and undervalued responsibilities of all. It's also one of the most common these days. 53 million Americans provide a staggering $500 billion in unpaid care every year. And if that burden were to shift to our healthcare system, our entire economy would be threatened. And with 10,000 Americans now turning 70 each and every day, and another 10,000 turning 65 every day, millions more are going to face the challenge of providing unpaid care each and every year. In fact, it was former First Lady Rosalind Carter president of the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving, who puts it this way: there are just four kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And unfortunately, most are underprepared, they're overwhelmed, they need help, they need support. So let's get with it. We're going to talk about solutions today, and we're going to pull together plenty of important resources, including a free downloadable Art of Caregiving workbook, a free download of my ebook, Rock Stars of Aging, and much more, including links to all of the videos that you'll see today. Like many caregiving innovators, our first guest was called to the mission for some very personal reasons. After both of her parents were diagnosed with Alzheimer's, she totally changed the trajectory of her professional life, dedicating herself to improving the quality of life for those in memory care. Among other life-enhancing programs, she's created a unique poetry facilitation process that actually triggers memory and imagination. The program has a unique and in many ways an unprecedented ability to engage those with dementia, even many who were previously nonverbal. Her work has been featured in U.S. News and World Report, PBS, NPR, Huffington Post, and major daily newspapers across the country. And through her advocacy, she's destigmatizing memory loss and helping redefine elder care. She is Molly Middleton Meyer, and yes, as you might have guessed, she is my little sister. And this is a photo of me, Molly, and our brother Tom, and our parents. And when this photo was taken, my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, but was still living at home with my mother, who would later be diagnosed herself. And when my mother could no longer take care of my father, she found a very nice memory care home nearby and moved him into it. And he was absolutely miserable, unable to have a beer when he wanted one, unable to watch TV when he wanted to, unable to eat what he wanted, unable to do just about anything that he wanted. So my brother Tom literally broke him out of the home and took him to the house, where he cared for him in the most loving and unconventional way. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually put him on the back of that motorcycle, but he took him home and allowed him to do many of the things that he wanted to do and gave him a quality of life until the very end. Molly joins us today from her home in Southern California. Molly, thanks for making time for us.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, let's start with brother Tom, because he absolutely was not a trained caregiver. He was totally unprepared for the responsibility. And while he did have to learn many important things, he was unconstrained by accepted protocol. Somehow, he knew that more was possible, and his desire to help Dad enjoy his final years seemed to trump every other consideration. Wasn't he actually doing what many in the industry are actually trying to do today?
Absolutely. I mean, you're right. And the people in the industry today that are trying to do it, it's with training and education and kind of a revamp of what has been done in the past. And, he did that just out of creativity and empathy. And he is a creative guy. So a lot of it was just out of the box. And he didn't know that wasn't what people really did. He just did it. And, as the quality of life for our dad was just spectacular. It was sort of like, he was like a time traveler. He traveled in time with Dad, past, forward, imagination, and he just embraced that moment and didn't try to reorient him, didn't, grieve over the fact that he wasn't exactly lucid or in Tom's reality. He was in his own reality, and he was able to do that.
I would want to know from your perspective, what advice could you give the industry to help them improve the quality of life in their community?
The people that work in memory communities, those people are so underpaid and underappreciated. That's one of the challenges, is valuing these people that are on the front line, and they are doing the hardest job. I also see that, the society is so litigious, and, again, it's a business, and this is probably not going to change, but we, in my opinion, are so over concerned about what we can and we cannot do with people with memory loss. And, of course, dignity for me is the number one thing. But, why can't they do things they want to do? Why can't they go horseback riding? Why can't they, why can't we go to outings and hike? I mean, they could fall in the community. If it's something that someone wants to do and they have a progressive disease, we wouldn't question that if someone had stage 4 cancer and they wanted to go, climb a mountain. We would think that was the coolest thing ever. But we don't have that philosophy with people with dementia.
I've heard you tell me that everybody should be writing down a list of, not just for them, for the people they might care for, but for themselves, a list of their favorite kind of music, their favorite food, their favorite memory, all of these different things, because they can become a valuable tool for you, can't they?
Oh my gosh. I mean, it is huge. It's something that no one wants to think about. Simple things like, what kind of music do you like? Would you rather do, an art project or go sit outside in the sun? What's your favorite drink? What always calms you down? And honestly, at a certain stage, and no one wants to hear this, nobody does, but I'm telling you it's true. At a certain stage, family members can be more upsetting and their visits can be more upsetting to the person with dementia than letting them be in whatever is joyful. So if you can write down, here's what I would want, and at this point, feel free. If I can't remember who you are, don't feel like you have to come and see me. I'll be fine. You can get as detailed as you want, but every single person should do it.
I'm thinking about the person at home, and if you have any specific tips for them. They're isolated and alone, and what are some things that might make life a little easier there?
Expanding your social circle is really important. Now, how do you do that when you're trying to take care of someone? There are online support groups. There are, physically go to support groups. Utilize your friends. And say, I need help. I need to be able to have a glass of wine. I need to be able to take a walk, because most people do not understand the 24/7 demands on a caregiver and how stressful that can be.
What's the moral of the story? What's the Molly Middleton Meyer takeaway about life in general? What have you learned from your journey?
I have learned from my journey that I will never get stuck in looking in the mirror and saying, oh my gosh, I'm old. And having that mean that I can't take healthy risks, that I can't reinvent myself, that I can't create a new journey. And mostly for me, and I think it's true for anybody, who can I help? The big takeaway for me is, I guess, what kind of is the cheesy things. It's love, it's empathy, it's kindness. And if you give it, you get it. It's one of those really cool universal things. So that's the big takeaway for me.
Helping not just those we care for and care about, but also helping ourselves. Molly, thank you so much for your time and all of your great advice.
Oh, thank you, Mark. It was wonderful and lovely to meet you, Amy. And I just appreciate the opportunity. I'm so passionate about it. So love to share.
I've mentioned Amy's book, The Fragile Years, Proven Strategies for the Care of Aging Loved Ones. It is filled with practical advice and guidance for caregivers of all kinds. But Amy, for today, you've compiled a list of 5 keys for the modern caregiver. Tell us what the first key is.
The first key is knowing that what you're about to embark on is called the fragile years. It's a stage. Menopause, terrible twos, teenage daughter, those are recognizable. The fragile years, you should learn about them so they're as recognizable as all those other stages. And the first step in the fragile years is you'll see a slowing down. You'll see a reduction in activities. I think about my dad golfing 5 days a week to 3 days a week. A friend of mine's mother was going to church 4 days a week. She started going to church 2 days a week. She became alarmed. I said, get ready. And then it goes to giving up some independence, reminiscing, looking back, having memories, driving around and seeing things, going on the Google Maps and looking at places that they used to live in history, and then gradually learning how to receive care. And so it's a natural stage to me. And when I would meet children, they would say, I can't believe this. I wasn't expecting this. I'm thinking, oh, you need to know this is normal. Once they learn that it's normal, it calms everything down, and then they can really be there.
I love that. That's a great point. We need to be aware that it's going to occur to us if we're lucky enough to live long enough, and then we adjust to it. And one of the ways we adjust is your second key: minimize medical intervention.
Oh, I love this one. Honestly, to me, when you're in the fragile years, the first key is find out what's important to the older adult. Do they want to eat? Do they want to watch TV? Do they want to walk? Do they want to go on? But what do they want to do? And then when you're interfacing with the acute medical system, the hospital, if one of those treatments or procedures is going to interfere with that love of what you want to do, don't do it, because your priority is how you want to function. And so less is more becomes the key in this time of life, because you could actually lower the number of years and the months that you're going to live, but also the quality. You could have surgery and end up in bed and never get back out of bed. I love the statistic of 20% of the people over 65 go to the hospital, leaving never to walk again.
Requires a pretty strong advocate to be able to confront the healthcare industry. I know you've made a living doing that, but it's difficult for personal home caregivers to ask the doctor a time or two or three or four, is this the right choice?
What I'd like to help caregivers learn is courage and professional courage. So check with somebody else about, does this seem normal? How do I talk to a doctor? Get that courage to go in and say what you want, because when you're arguing with a doctor, it's intimidating.
Key number 3 in Amy O'Rourke's 5 Keys for the Modern Caregiver is something we touched on a bit just a moment ago, and that is manage expectations, because we're not going to be superstars. No one is.
No. So what I like to help people do is, in this time of life, everybody has anxiety. Everybody has expectations that they want to have met, and they usually collide. So you want to manage them. What's realistic? What is, if you want your mom or dad to go to the gym 6 days a week, where they are, is that realistic? If you want your mom and dad to continue eating and you want them to go out to dinner, but they're really not wanting to do that, bring the dinner in. Continually manage what you're expecting, and typically the mistake that caregivers make is they want to make a solution that's too big, too much for the older adult to really sustain. Example, mom is falling. I want her to move to assisted living so she will stop falling. That's extreme. And people fall in the assisted living, people fall in the nursing home. So it's an extreme solution, and it's too much too fast for the older adult to even absorb, because they have their own expectations. I'm going to live independently, and I'm going to die without needing any care at all, because they're scared. So you have colliding anxieties that both need support, so that everybody can get clear on what are your expectations, what are mine, and you got to get to where the older adults' expectations are.
And as you're managing your expectations, isn't it true that you have to be nimble, because no matter how well you plan in caregiving, it may not occur the way you think it will?
It's absolutely true. It's one of the things that I love, because I love change and I love changing on a dime. People who are really controlling have a difficult time with this, and I like to recommend that they get some therapy. Because honestly, control is really from anxiety that something's not going to go according to plan. So if you get help with what you're trying to control, it's usually uncontrollable, as most things in life are, then you can actually, like I said earlier, be there with the person that you are caring for.
All right, key number 4, while you are managing your expectations, pace yourself, or as you say, manage your energy.
Well, just yesterday, I'm meeting in the nursing home lobby with a daughter who's crying her eyes out. She's working full time, her dad lives across the street, her mom's in a nursing home, and she hasn't stopped any of her normal activities. And she's sobbing from fatigue, but she hasn't really learned how to manage her own energy. So she needs help with her dad, she needs help with her mom, she needs help with herself. And I could see it very clearly. By the end of our meeting, she could see that she couldn't sustain all the things she was doing, because you only have a limited amount of energy in a day.
Yeah.
And she felt tremendous relief knowing I don't have to walk around so fatigued all the time. Because what happens is they get mad, and they don't want to get mad at their person they're caring for.
All right, 4 great keys to help us try to get this right, but your 5th key is really kind of the catch-all, what to do when all else fails, because ultimately it will sometime.
Well, that's right. And I think for people to realize that all their interventions, all their help and support might not get their parent, usually their parents, to where they need to be. So you wait, you investigate areas like home care companies, nursing homes, assisted living, caregiving. You find out all the support ahead of time, and you wait, and you realize that when the crisis hits, you've done all your research and you'll be there for them. In addition to, don't leave your parent because they're not doing what you think they should do. Just continue to be there. And don't lose that connection. You just have to let go of you're not getting what you want.
Yeah, doing this preparation that you've mentioned a couple of times should be a no-brainer for everybody that has an older parent that is approaching what you call the fragile years. Absolutely. Well, folks, many times it is family, friends, or neighbors that have to step up into these caregiving roles, but in some cases that's just not possible, and other resources have to come into play. Florida Blue Medicare members have access to what is really a very unique service called PAPA, which includes 60 hours every year of assistance from a PAPA pal, providing help and companionship to help those who need care so that they can be happy and healthy and safe in their own home. We recently went to Vero Beach, Florida to see how this service works firsthand.
Well, I'll have to do some of this clipping here too.
Rita LePage is 91 years old and lives alone. She loves her life, values her independence, and relies on Bobby Spencer for help and companionship. Bobby is a Papa Pal, part of a unique and life-enriching service provided to Florida Blue Medicare members at no additional cost.
It's just so satisfying. It's just such a good feeling to be with people and to help them when they need help. The companionship is just so much needed by so many people, and I love to be there for them.
Rita has a large and loving family, but they don't live nearby. Rita's granddaughter told her about Papa Pal.
And she told me, she says, you can have anyone giving you help in the house if you want it. I says, that would be wonderful.
And so just knowing that, she can be independent, be happy, do the things that she wants to do, but then get a little support along the way makes you feel good knowing that, she, even though we live a little ways away, she still has help that she needs.
Florida Blue Medicare partners with Papa Pal to help members when, where, and how they need it most. They provide the kind of companionship and emotional support necessary to live and feel better at home. They assist with transportation to doctor's appointments, do light housework, and pick up medication and groceries.
Oh, you really got a lot today.
I know. Can you get them all, or I can bring one?
Oh, I can get them for you, dear.
Yeah.
It's just vital for many of them to be able to have this service to call upon and to have Florida Blue there for them whenever they need it.
She said, do you need any vacuuming? I said, not really. I says, why don't we play cards instead? So she said, that's all right with me, we'll play cards.
A Florida Blue Medicare Papa Pal provides members a helping hand, a shoulder to lean on, and an ear to listen.
Oh, I really enjoy it whenever she shows me her pictures of her family. She has lots of pictures of her family. And she has a very large family. And that's just fantastic.
I have 11 grandchildren and 13 great-grands.
Oh, my.
So
that's wonderful.
Rita's 5 children are especially grateful for her Papa Pal.
Well, it makes me feel comfortable, and I don't worry about her as much as I would if she didn't have that Papa Pal program. It's an amazing program that they've put together, and it helps all these people who are secluded or have no family around them.
Rita's walls are filled with photos of her large and loving family. In many ways, a Florida Blue Medicare Papa Pal is like having family on call, ready, willing, and able to help out at any time in just about any way.
And knowing that she has her Papa Pal to look forward to it's comforting.
I think you have a green thumb up to your elbow.
A Papa Pal helps Rita maintain her independence and feel safe in her own home.
You better believe it. It does. It really does.
And it gives her family peace of mind.
They feel that I'm safe because I belong to Florida Blue. I will swear by Florida Blue Medicare. I really would. It's one of the greatest insurance that I ever had.
A Florida Blue Papa Pal is a great example of the many benefits of human connection and support. And I think if the pandemic taught us anything at all, it's that staying connected in some fashion is critically important to all of our health. The pandemic also taught us that more and more of us want to remain in our own homes for as long as possible. And for many, that's made more difficult by the fact that families are now more geographically disconnected than ever. The kids don't live near mom and dad, and in many cases, mom and dad are no longer together. In fact, 43% of men and women over 65 now live alone, and among those who are 80 and over, 58% live alone. Which is exactly why a company named GrandPad was created. GrandPad is a first of its kind tablet that provides an easy and secure way for older adults to stay engaged with family, friends, and caregivers. It's also a safe platform for entertaining and educational content. In fact, when we were interviewing Rita for the story you just saw, unannounced, unprompted, she pulled out her GrandPad and just had to do a quick demo.
This is my son and his wife.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then my granddaughter with their family. I have 11 grandchildren and 13 great-grands. With this, I can get in touch with all the children. And it's only my children and their families. There's a lot of games, yes. Solitaire, I just learned how to play solitaire maybe a year ago. It's nice to have. I love my GrandPad.
Well, that is an unsolicited, enthusiastic endorsement, and we just had to chat with the guy who's responsible, founder and CEO Scott Lane. And Scott was recently named a finalist for the prestigious Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year Heartland Award. He joins us from Minneapolis, where GrandPad is based. Scott, first of all, congratulations on the recognition and welcome. Thanks for making the time.
Great to be with you, Mark.
You know, you're a guy who, with a tech background, who saw a real need. You founded your company back in 2014, and I'm thinking that the pandemic made you seem like a genius, because now everybody is looking for ways to help older adults stay connected with family, whether they're in their home or in assisted living. It does really seem like you were a little bit ahead of your time.
Yeah, we were. We started this journey over almost 9 years ago, and the old saying, kind of failure is always an orphan, success always has 1,000 fathers, kind of was true, right? The first few years was difficult because there wasn't the interest in connecting seniors digitally that there is now. So even though there's, the pandemic was horrible, I think one good thing that's come out of it is the realization that keeping people connected in person and digitally when needed is essential.
What did you learn when you were interviewing older adults to create your product?
We realized that we, society, and I previously worked in Silicon Valley, we were forcing what I lovingly call super seniors, those in their 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s. We were forcing them to use standard technology, smartphones and tablets and computers that were designed primarily by 30-year-olds with a 30-year-old user in mind. For someone who was in their 90s, it was the frustration to the point of being unusable. So we, society, we do expect people to be digitally connected, but we didn't have a way for this age group to be connected. So that was the first aha. And we said, well, none of us have ever been 90 before. We don't know what it's like to be 90. So rather than guess, let's get a group of 80, 90, and 100-year-olds together. We call them our grand advisors. They're really the designers who build the product that they want, and we're just the hands that assembles it for them. That's the big breakthrough. And when you do that, now that group of elderly adults is not frustrated by technology, but they're liberated, they're enabled, they're able to communicate with their family, friends, and caregivers in a way that uplifts them.
You did a great job because we've seen people use it, how easy it is to use it, but making it something, Scott, that they can use is one thing. But as you mentioned, these are 80 and 90 and 100-year-olds. They're all very nervous about being online, and with good reason. It can be very insecure. A lot of bad things can happen. How did you solve the other problem with your device? Not just making it easy to use, but making it safe to use.
Yeah, so we created what we call the circle of trust. It's really a walled garden that you have to be invited into by the senior or by one of their family administrators. Only people who are invited in can communicate with that senior. They're the only people who can call or email or share photos with that super senior, which is completely different than other social media and so on. When you post something on typical standard social media, the whole world can see it, including the bad guys. And that's how the bad guys use scams. So by creating this walled garden and removing the fear so that when your grandpad rings, you know it's someone in that circle of trust. It's your daughter, your granddaughter, your great-granddaughter, or your doctor. Think about all the doctors and nurses and caregivers that are trying to get a hold of seniors with sometimes very urgent healthcare information. The seniors don't recognize the phone number, so they don't answer the phone. Now you're in this game of phone tag with the doctor. We all know how overburdened our caregivers, our clinicians are. So by increasing that answer rate, improving that, we're able to create that communication between the doctors, nurses, and the seniors, because they'll answer the phone when the grandpad rings. So that's how we've been able to remove the fear and increase the engagement.
The other thing I think about, Scott, are the caregivers that are trying to get their parents to use the technology and they're scared. The older adult, no. What are some tips you can give caregivers to enhance the idea for the older adult to participate in this grandpad?
Yeah, one of the things that we've learned is that the sharing of family photos and family memories, photos and videos, is a key way to drive engagement. We see the super seniors taking pictures and sharing, hey, here's my garden. Look how great my tomatoes are looking. And then the grandchild who's trying to grow tomatoes will start to engage with grandma and go, gosh, grandma, how did you do that? I'm having a problem. Can you help me? And now they're creating a dialogue using photos as a way to bring them in. So that's one of the many ways. But I'm excited to announce for the first time here that we are just now rolling out a true multiplayer games between the seniors on the grandpad and the family on their companion app. So, and it was inspired by, I used to play checkers face to face with my grandpa all the time when I was, and now we can play checkers. So grandma can reach out to me and say, hey, Scott, you want to play checkers? And it pops up on my smartphone. And now we're playing and we can talk to each other and create that engagement, even though we live a long ways apart.
It was a brilliant idea, Scott Lane. You have done a tremendous job of continuing to evolve it, continuing to make it something that is usable in so many ways. So thank you for all what you're doing, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Mark.
If you ask me, I think one of the most powerful benefits of grandpad is that it is something positive for caregivers and those they care for to do together, what Scott just mentioned. And maybe even more important than that, it gives older adults something we've been talking about and we'll talk about more today, and that is a sense of autonomy, the ability to engage on their own and to make their own decisions. I mean, before something like grandpad, they didn't have the ability to say, oh, let me communicate with my grandchild. Let me ask a question. Let me look at this. Let me share that. So, it's an important area to improve the quality of life for people in their 80s and 90s. And you got to give grandpad kudos. It's one thing to hear Scott talk about it. We've seen it in action, and it works pretty well.
Yeah, and I think the ability to show off your grandkids to the caregivers and share a bit of your life with the caregivers broadens their view of you, and I think it's a really wonderful thing.
When we work to provide those that we care for with a sense of autonomy, we inevitably run into a discussion of risk, which is a dilemma for all caregivers. Risk is defined as the chance that something occurs that's different than what we expected. Healthcare professionals, and really most of us in general, tend to focus only on negative risk, the chance that the outcome will be worse than we expected. But there is also positive risk, the chance that something better than we expected might happen. So let me share a picture now and a few short video clips, and I want to get Amy's thoughts on autonomy and risk as we age, and in particular in caregiving situations. All right, this is the story of Sue and the horse, and this was told to me by a caregiver who worked in a memory care center, and there was an older resident there by the name of Sue who all of a sudden just wanted to ride a horse. And every day she said, "I want to ride a horse, I want to ride a horse." And all of the other residents in this memory care center began to make fun of her and said, "You can't ride a horse, you're too old to ride a horse, you're going to get hurt." But she continued to say, "I want to ride a horse." And in what I think is an example of a great caregiver, this caregiver thought about it because she heard it so many times, and she actually stopped at a stable in that hometown, and she said, "I've got an older resident who is in her fragile years. She's got cognitive decline, but she wants to ride a horse. Is it possible?" And the guy said, "Oh, heck yes. We work with wounded warriors. We have the ability to put disabled people on a horse. They love it. It'll be great. Bring her down." So she went back and told Sue that she was going to ride a horse, and Sue began broadcasting to everybody, "I'm going to ride a horse. I'm going to ride a horse." And they continued to make fun of her. But when that day came, the caregiver said, "We're taking Sue to ride the horse. Does anybody want to go and watch?" And they had to take two vans because everybody wanted to go and watch. And they sat there and they watched Sue get up on the horse. They saw the smile on her face. And then the caregiver said, "Is there anybody else that would like to ride the horse?" And everybody raised their hands. And what was going to be a 20-minute field trip turned into a 2-hour field trip because everybody wanted to ride the horse. What do you think about this? Because I don't think there's a lot of caregivers that would make that happen.
Well, one, I love it. I'm moved by it, and it reminds me of a gentleman that we had in the nursing home that was a businessman, and he had a memory impairment, and he would say, "Money, money, money, money." And so we just gave everybody dollar bills. And when he said it, we gave him a dollar bill. So it's just having that fun of an open mind and a creative mind. It gave him pleasure. And, you know, maybe we lost a few bucks along the way, but it gave him pleasure and autonomy. So I support absolutely open mind creativity and see what can happen as a result of it.
And she did what I think she had to do in terms of convincing herself that the risk would be minimal. I mean, let's face it, as you mentioned, we fall down, there's risk everywhere. But if you minimize the risk to provide the opportunity for something, sometimes it's a worthwhile trade.
That's right, that's right. And then you get the joy on the person's face when they're on the horse, and there's no price on that.
All right, speaking of minimizing the risk for the potential positive outcome in risk, Banana George was the world's most famous water skier. In fact, he still holds the Guinness World Record as the world's oldest barefooter. George was 94 years old when he called me out of the blue one day and said he was going to go barefoot water skiing one final time the next day. I was shocked because he had been in bed for months with pneumonia, and as you can see, it took him 10 minutes with the help of two people to walk to the lake behind his house. One of his friends hooked up this rig where he could kind of sit on a swing for a while to get his feet on the water and then try to stand up, but his wrists were so weak he couldn't do it, and he tumbled. Now, this is a 94-year-old guy, and you saw his condition as he walked out, but he wanted to do this. And he tumbled. And Amy, I've shown this. His wife told me, no, I don't want him to do it. His doctor said, no, you shouldn't do it, but he wanted to do it. So they made it happen for him. And I've shown this to caregivers. And I say, if he had died that day, would that have been a bad thing? I've never had a single caregiver shake their head, yes, it would have been a bad thing. This was a 94-year-old guy doing what he lived to do. And not only did he not die, I think it gave him the energy to continue to live another 6 years. He almost made it to 100. What do you think about that?
Well, I think what you don't know is the emotional benefits. I mean, everybody's got their own internal work that they're doing, their own internal resolve. And if someone's pushed to do something, I think it's really important to listen and support them in that effort because you don't know what you don't know.
I spoke at a caregiving conference a few years ago, and I was mentioning that I think it's far more impactful to show someone what's possible than it is to tell them. It's the old deal that example has more followers than reason, and when we see somebody doing something that we didn't think we could do, something that we thought we could do, something that we never imagined we could do, then kind of like the switch is flipped, and we think, well, maybe we could do it. And after I had this conversation with this group of caregivers, a woman who was a caregiver came up to me and said that her 92-year-old mother broke her hip. And she said, Mark, she was the most vibrant woman that I've ever known. We'd shop together, we loved to do everything together, but she was just totally depressed. And I said, Mom, what's wrong? And she said, honey, nobody my age ever comes back from a broken hip. And within 6 months, she was gone. And that's what the statistics are. Older people that break a hip typically are dead within a year. And she said, if I could have shown her one example of someone in their 90s coming back from a broken hip to have a quality of life, I think she'd still be alive today. And I said, well, I know there's examples out there, and I'm going to find one. And very fortuitously, not long after that, I ran into 94-year-old Dottie Gray competing in the 100-meter dash at the National Senior Games 1 year after breaking her hip. She had a fracture so bad, the doctors told her family she probably wouldn't survive surgery. And when she did, the physical therapist told her family, do not encourage her to walk again because it will end badly. She is now to be in a wheelchair. And Dottie said, that is BS. I'm not only going to walk, I'm going to run. And here she is running in the National Senior Games. Her family supported her belief that she could do it. And this is an amazing thing. I get inspired just seeing this.
I think when I see things like this, I think the value of positive energy versus negative energy,
Amen.
and all should be focused on the positive energy, and then what's meant to happen ends up happening, and it's just a beautiful, inspiring, uplifting experience.
Yeah, it really, really is. All right, Amy, I know you remember Glenn Campbell, the Rhinestone Cowboy. By the time I get to Phoenix, Wichita lineman, and many, many others. At the age of 71, Campbell was diagnosed, or at least he announced at that time that he had Alzheimer's disease. He then went on a well-publicized farewell tour with 3 of his children who were backing him on stage. And I just love the video of this. It was both heartbreaking and heartwarming at the same time, because Glenn would forget his words while he was performing, and his kids, his band, would help him remember. Then the audience would start singing with him. It was really, really cool. But at some point, he was no longer able to travel or perform at all. And his wife, Kim, talked to Growing Bolder about the difficult but ultimately the necessary decision to move Glenn into a memory care community.
Absolutely, it was the best thing we could have done. The doctor is the one who actually pushed me that direction. He said, I can't believe you're still trying to do this at home. This just isn't safe for you. It's not safe for Glenn. A lot of people don't realize that many people with Alzheimer's become combative. It had become dangerous for me to take care of him at home. And I didn't know that memory care communities existed. I thought about the stereotypical nursing homes, and I was horrified by that thought. But when I started visiting memory care communities, I realized that they've got, they're vibrant communities, with pet therapy and music therapy and horticulture therapy, art classes. Glenn loved being around people. And so many times people with Alzheimer's become isolated in their home, and they don't have any socialization, and that happened to me too when we were at home, and I felt like Glenn was a shut-in. I was shut in with him. I couldn't put him in the car, as we just talked about, and drive him somewhere. I didn't want to take him out in public. He needed a special environment. But when we joined the community, that was my community too. And now we were there with other families on the same journey, experiencing the same things. And, we laughed together, cried together, prayed for each other, and supported each other in that journey. And it was a blessing.
I think it's pretty obvious Glenn had great care. His wife was a very perceptive and smart woman. He did pass away in 2017 at the age of 81, and Kim published a memoir after that called Gentle on My Mind, in Sickness and in Health, that chronicles her role as a caregiver and their relationship through it all. And Amy, as difficult as it can be, sometimes the best solution is actually to let go and move someone into the care of someone else.
Yeah, I think the hardest part of loving someone with a memory impairment is giving them what they need, knowing that you're going to lose something yourself. And in a memory unit, the memory deficit is supported in a positive way. The pressure to perform is not there because everybody else has a memory impairment. So the anxiety of knowing you're not doing what you should be doing, but not even being able to change your behavior is lessened, and they actually feel better, but you lose something.
Yeah, it's a great point. You know, Dan Gatsby's story is very similar to many of the others we've been talking about. He's become a passionate caregiving advocate because of what he went through. His wife was Bea Smith, the well-known supermodel turned author, lifestyle guru, and media mogul. She was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's at the age of 64, and Dan became her primary caregiver. In an effort to destigmatize the diagnosis, they not only spoke openly about her condition, they co-wrote Before I Forget, which is filled with some practical advice and tips. And we spoke to Dan about the roller coaster ride that all caregivers go through.
I think of the movie A Perfect Storm, and I think about the situation when the captain thought he was going to get out of it, or thought it was going to change, because you'd see these Polaroids of clarity, or you'd see the sun break over between all of the dark clouds, and then all of a sudden the clouds come back in, and he makes that famous line, "She's not letting me out." And that's what you experience. Yeah, there was times, but there was also times when it would be like you're reading the words, but you don't know what the words mean. But music did make a difference. I mean, that was something internal that she could relate to and listen to. She couldn't articulate how she felt about it other than to articulate or express how her emotions, her body would move, or she would sway to the music. And for the caregiver, understanding both sides of the coin is the most difficult thing, because you know that she's not totally getting it. And you want to believe that you're going to get out of, or that she's going to get out, or that we are going to get out of this storm. And then you realize it's not letting us out.
You know, we're starting to see some common themes, some common threads, you know, that are woven throughout these different stories. Dan told us, Amy, that the main takeaway for him is acceptance, accepting each day as it comes, as different as it might be from the day before. And I think he's right. When we can't change what is, we do have to change our reaction to what is. Caregivers have to learn to take a deep breath and just go with the flow.
Yeah, I think about the level of uncertainty that all of us live in, and then the microcosm of caring for somebody with a memory impairment. Everything's uncertain, and not having them there, and then they're there, and then they say something that's clear, and then they're not, and the pain of that, and how spiritually you have to adjust yourself emotionally and spiritually to be there, to get to that level of acceptance. It follows the stages of grief, and if any of the audience is watching this, that's a really helpful thing to do, is to understand the stages of grief, and the last stage is acceptance. And so you are grieving. They call it ambiguous loss. And you're losing something, but they're still there. And that he got to acceptance, I was moved to tears watching him.
The sooner you can get to acceptance, the more you can appreciate and embrace the blessing that is caregiving. You know, when we were fortunate enough to get Amy to join us today, we encouraged followers online to take advantage of the situation and submit questions for Amy. We got a bunch of them, but we're going to ask you one of them right now if we can. It comes from Cheryl, and she says, "How do I keep my husband from feeling not independent?" Which is, I think, a problem for everybody. You know, they want to take care of them, but they want to give them the autonomy that we talk about.
Exactly. So the first thing to do is watch, see what they want to do, and see if that's possible. Do they want to set the table? Do they want to do a load of laundry? Do they want to do yard work? What do they want to do? And what can you let them do and get help with your anxiety watching them? I think that's finding what's possible. The example that I used earlier with my dad in the grocery store, it was a managed risk. He's in the grocery store. He does have a memory impairment. Is he going to make it out? I was sneaking in and out of the aisles to make sure he was where he was supposed to be. But that's giving him a sense of autonomy. And I think finding those things with your loved one in the home can be kind of fun.
Is he going to make it out? And is he going to embarrass you? I think that's got to be a fear that a lot of people have in that situation.
Maybe I should have been embarrassed, but I got such a kick out of him that I just couldn't be embarrassed over him. It cracked me up how brave he was. It's kind of like my blind dog. He runs everywhere. He doesn't care. He's like unaware that he's blind, and it cracks me up. It was the same thing with my dad. He didn't care. He was talking to him, and if he repeated himself, he was unaware and he didn't care. And I thought I could learn something from that.
And kudos to you for not making him care, because I think that is, as you mentioned earlier, what we tend to do with people that have, these memory loss issues, is they always feel that they're making a mistake, that what they're saying is wrong, and then they just kind of disconnect and withdraw.
One little tip is there's these cards that say this person has Alzheimer's, this person has a memory impairment, and just hand them out so that you know that everybody else knows what's going on and let them enjoy it.
All right, we had a lot of different versions of a question that I know is probably the number one question that you get asked all the time. So share with us what that question is.
All right, the question is, my mom or my dad keeps refusing my help. They don't want my help. They won't let me in. They won't let me hire caregivers. And sometimes you have to stop and do nothing. Or you look at what you're asking them to do and it's probably unrealistic. And third, you have to remember that they are having to let go of independence, which is the beginning of the end. It's the beginning of the end of life. And that's a painful thing to feel. I've noticed people's faces when I walk in the home, and I'm like representing, now I need care, so I'm on my way out. I don't want you in here because then I have to face the reality. So getting prepared, but also checking out what you're asking them to do. Is it realistic? And then sometimes you just have to hang around and wait.
Fortunate to have the renowned Amy O'Rourke answering your questions today. Teepa Snow is another world leader in developing techniques for caring for people that are living with Alzheimer's and other types of dementia. Her company is called Positive Approach to Care, and she collaborates to improve dementia care in over 30 countries worldwide. And we asked Teepa about starting the most important and for many families the most difficult conversations of all.
I usually encourage people to look in the mirror at themselves first and say, okay, what if something happened to you? Who would be your support system? How would you do that now? And then imagine one of those key people not available. How would you shift things? And so what's the array of things you need to be thinking about for you? And now that you've thought about it for you, let's hold the mirror up and say, so Dad, I've been thinking about for myself if something were to happen. So tell me a little bit about what you're thinking with this, and this. And so I always start with, tell me what you think with the other person so that I hear their first thought. And it's like, well, I haven't ever thought about that kind of thing. It's like, so you haven't ever thought. So you're 82 now, and I'm this, and I'm just concerned with your diabetes and your heart disease, that things could change. And I don't want us sitting here not thinking. What do you feel or think about at least having some kind of plan in place? Even if it's just, I start paying attention to what happens when you go to the doctor. And it may be, I call them baby bites. I mean, they're tiny little bites out of the apple. Particularly for people who struggle with, I'm me, I don't need you, I don't want to be a burden, I don't want to do this,
That's
I don't want to do that. I mean, it's everybody. So how do we start these conversations in ways that are not confrontational, but are supportive? And if I look at me and then I turn to you and go, ugh, I just realized I don't have any plans. Have you done anything? I mean, do you even have a healthcare power of attorney identified yet? Do you have a will? I mean, I just realized, oh my gosh, I did a will, but it's been so long, I never updated it. And that's a better conversation than, Dad, you haven't done your will? Are you crazy? I mean, what if something were to, I mean, that's this.
She makes some great points, and I think it sounds like to me, Amy, to some extent, there's a lot of role playing involved in here. You're almost an actor trying to figure out the right way into the scene.
It is. But if you remember that staying quiet and asking questions, it takes some of the pressure off. So you can really listen and then go with where they're going. You don't have to be pushing them to go anywhere. I love listening to TPUP.
You know, I think one of the reasons this is so difficult for everybody is that there's so much diversity among older adults now, including different desires and values, which is why we need to have these conversations. Many healthcare professionals and family members try to impose, I think, their own belief systems on the senior that they're caring for. And Amy, you've advised families now for over 40 years. Why do we have so much trouble initiating these conversations and then kind of following them through to some sort of conclusion that's important?
Well, I think it's either the number one fear or the number two fear is fear of death. So overall, we're afraid of dying, and we're afraid of getting old. We're afraid of losing our abilities and capabilities. It's very, very scary. And what people do when they're scared is they ignore, pretend it's not there. Then their anxiety builds up, and they go in with a solution that's too strong, too much, and can't be received.
You know, I hope you folks are getting that. At least it seems to me there really is no one perfect right answer, which is why we're having this conversation. You know, we all need to have this conversation, not just you with your parent or significant other that you're caring for, but our culture, our society in general needs to start talking about these things. You know, there is no question that we all need to do a better job of preparing for the inevitability of care for our parents, for our significant others, and really for ourselves, because the need is only going to grow exponentially. Here's a couple of statistics that I think are alarming. The number of fragile elderly will double by 2040, and 70% of those who are over 65 are going to need long-term care. But unfortunately, 52% of those who are over 50 today have no retirement savings at all. And add to that the fact that there is now this widening care gap, more people needing care, fewer people to provide that care. And Amy, the entire burden to care for us as we age cannot fall to family caregivers. You know, again, we've mentioned 53 million of us out there that are doing the heavy lifting, but somebody's got to do more. And you know, I think it's got to be the government. What more could or should the government be doing?
So I hope one of the audience members of this show gets to their politician and has them listen, because I think we could save the government money by looking at the laws that fund nursing homes almost 100%, but not enough money for people to stay at home and get care at home, even though it could be done less expensively. And a lot of the regulations that were designed to make nursing homes more safe has created management overhead that takes away from being able to hire aides to care for the elder, which is really what career caregivers want. They want to take care of the older adult. And if they could take care of 5 instead of 10, get rid of the risk manager, get rid of the MDS coordinator, get rid of the care plan coordinator, change the laws that support lower staff to patient ratios.
Yeah, in many ways we're being penny wise and pound foolish, and
Exactly.
we all have a voice, and we got to learn to use it, folks. You know, at Growing Bolder, we say that we all need to begin thinking of ourselves as caregivers, because even if we don't have an aging parent or a spouse, there is always somebody in our community, in our neighborhood, right up the street that needs support. It may be the older woman or man who lives alone and might appreciate having someone, you know, pick something up at the grocery store or bringing their mail inside, or just somebody to talk to on occasion. And here's a story that's near to and dear to my heart. My colleague Bill Schaefer and I learned just how easy it is to make a difference in somebody's life when we decided to check in on Ruth Hamilton, a 109-year-old woman that we hadn't seen in years. And I took this photo the day that we first visited Ruth. Ruth was in an assisted living home, hadn't had a visitor in years. She slept all day and she rarely left her room. But we went back time and time again. She woke up more quickly, and we began to tell her a little bit about her life. And I think this goes to some of the stuff we've talked about in this program. The more you know about somebody, the more you can rekindle their memories and their imagination. And we said, Ruth, remember when you did this, and remember when you did that. And she woke up and was so happy to be engaged in conversation. And one day I opened up my laptop and told Ruth that there was a camera on the laptop, and I was going to hit record, and she could say whatever she wanted to say, and we would share that online, and people all over the world could hear her thoughts. Now, this is a former teacher. We knew that. She got so inspired by the fact that at 109 years old, she could still continue to teach that, son of a gun, every time we showed up and turned that laptop on, she started to go off on many different topics. We dubbed her Ruth 1898, which was the year of her birth, and she became the world's oldest video blogger, sharing up to 20 video blogs with Growing Bolder. We would get people to comment on those. We would then go back and say, Ruth, here's what Susie in Switzerland wants to know. Ruth's transformation over a 9 or 10 month period was phenomenal. In fact, this is the first time we visited with Ruth, and on the right is the last time. She knew that we were coming. She got excited. She put on her dress. She put on her makeup. She put on her jewelry. And folks, I won't pretend that we gave her her life back, but we did give her a quality of life for the final 10 months of her life that she wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think the important question here is, who is your Ruth? Whose life can you make even just a little better simply by reaching out and making an effort? We have covered a whole lot of ground today, so let's leave everybody with a few additional takeaways. And for me, number one really is the power of positivity. And I think no matter what our age or situation is, we have to understand the importance of a positive attitude. In fact, research has proven that people who have a positive attitude about aging will live on average 7.5 years longer than those with a negative attitude about aging. And it's not just that you're going to live longer, folks, you're going to live better. I mean, just imagine this. If Dottie Gray had believed what her doctors and therapists told her, she'd be in a wheelchair today and she wouldn't be running or playing ping pong in her driveway like she's doing today. All right, takeaway number two, what do you got?
2 words: slow down. Slow down decision making. Slow down the pace of your life. Slow down. If the doctor's recommending a surgery, get a second opinion. The hospital wants to discharge your loved one, slow that discharge down. Most decisions made in a hurry end up being troubled decisions. There's value in wisdom in slowing everything down.
I love it. Takeaway number 3 is the importance of socialization. Do not underestimate the importance of hanging out with others and the dangers of being isolated. We are all very social creatures, even the very old and the infirm. Can I say infirm?
You can.
I'll say the fragile. Need social connection. One study found that as we age, in fact, low socialization is as bad for our overall health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Number 4.
Number 4. Take perfection and throw it out the window.
I love that.
Embrace the imperfection and the messiness of caregiving and enjoy it.
And finally, number 5, folks, celebrate what remains. It is easy, it's natural to mourn what's lost, not only in our own lives, but in those that we care for. And a key to successful aging and successful caregiving is to focus and celebrate on what remains. Caregiving, in most cases, is not a rehab program. It's not about taking something that's broken and trying to fix it. It's about focusing on what your loved one can do, not what they can't do, and then celebrate that. And of course, don't forget Amy's 5 Keys for the Modern Caregiver. You can download those on our website, along with the Growing Bolder Art of Caregiving workbook, my ebook, Rockstars of Aging, and much more, including links to the videos you've seen today. It's all free and available at growingbolder.com/caregiving. And finally, if we did little more than learn to look at, engage with, and support the elderly as we now do the disabled, we would be making monumental progress. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 helped create a world of technological and cultural accommodation. And yet, when older people lose abilities and in essence become disabled, we simply shrug our shoulders and say, well, we'll just keep them comfortable because they're old after all. We need to confront the ageism that's so pervasive in our culture. We need to realize that a moment at 90 is as valuable as a moment at 19. In fact, I think it may be more valuable because so few of us get to experience it. We need to learn to celebrate and be grateful for the blessing of extra years, to continue to find passion and purpose for ourselves and those we care for and care about. Amy, this has been great. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
I appreciate that. And for Amy O'Rourke and all of us at Growing Bolder, thank you for your time. If you're a caregiver, we see you, we celebrate you, and we will continue to do all we can to support you.